Hello, Wine and Dine listeners. This month, we are going to be featuring a winery called Hanson Vineyards. This is a family-run winery. And the really cool thing that we found out when we were visiting this winery is that the winemaker originally went to college in Ithaca, is from Oregon, but went to college in Ithaca, spent some time in Washington, D.C. He was super cool to talk to because he was more in the lawmaking side. So we had a little conversation about that, and then moved back to Oregon and his family farm with very, very deep roots in the area to, which I loved because they actually have that family farm and very deep roots. Of course, I loved that it was deep roots with Rooted Planning Group, but we had a chance to actually talk with them, with the winemaker when we were there. So much fun. If you want to follow him on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, it's Hanson Vineyards. So you can follow them there. But one thing that I discovered when I was there was that his great-grandfather's winemaker's great-grandfather was originally from Norway and moved to Oregon in 1896, purchased the farm that was across the road from the winery. They then took the property into a winery in 1930. So that's when it says very deep roots. That's what they mean. Well, let me tell you, we love their wine. Of course, they had a good Pinot Noir. That's what Oregon is known for. But today, what I'm going to talk about is their Gamay. The Gamay Noir is one of the different grapes that exists, and we loved it. It was unique. It was dry. It was mouthful, flavorful, really savored the wine. So if you enjoy something different, go try the Gamay Red that they have. It's $26 per bottle. Good price point. Of course, if you're going to have it shipped, there's additional costs associated with it. But we really enjoyed their Gamay. They do have a club that you can join if you're interested. Not trying to sell this company, of course, but I do really think that if you're looking for something different, there's no cost to join, which I absolutely love. If you get out to Oregon, there's complimentary wine tasting for you and your guests. You get 15% off the first 12 bottles each year. And then if you go beyond that, you get 25% off. You also have access to new and limited wines. And they do have some invitations that you can get invited to. One is out in July. Maybe it changes different each year. And then they do invite you to vertical tastings. Now, of course, we won't be able to be there, but we did talk to Jason, the winemaker, and ask if there's any way we could virtually do that. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. If we learn more, we'll certainly let you all know. One thing that I loved that Jason said to us is whether you're a wine connoisseur or a novice, I should say, he's very open to questions. And he really, truly embodied that. So, he said no questions are a dumb question. And we can usually get pretty deep in the weeds if you want, which is what we loved about our conversation. So we'd love for you to hop out onto their website, explore them. We're going to post a link in the Facebook page. And if you do happen to buy anything from them and he wants to know how you found out about us, just drop our name, Amy and Brent Irvine, or Wine and Dime Podcast. Thanks, everyone. We hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Every week, it's our goal to share financial information that helps you both in your life and financial vineyard. We hope it takes you from your roots to the journey of your vines and the influences in the air that help craft your delicious life. Like wine, life and finances have different palates that should be celebrated and not judged. Welcome to this edition of Wine and Dime with Amy Irvine and Kate Welker. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Amy.
Well, it's August, which means we're on the third, I should say the third part of the summer, right? I always think of the summer broken down into the end of June, July, and August. Mm-hmm. And kids are going to be going back to school next month. And this can be a very expensive month for people with children. Uh-huh. And it can be a very stressful month with people with children. Any particular beverage or wine that you're looking to explore as you venture out for one of the stressful seasons of back to school?
Well, I will say I love fall. So back to school makes me think about fall, and we're outside a lot for events. So even though at the moment we're recording, it's muggy and almost 90 degrees out, I'm looking forward to like a warm, latte or something on the sidelines of a game.
There you go. Well, you'll have to tell us what going forward, what some of your favorite lattes
Yeah.
are. So perfect. Well, we're actually recording in July for those that are wondering why I'm not giving a wine tip. It's because I'm saving them all up for when I'm recording in August. Brent and I are headed out to Oregon, as many of you have heard, and I can't wait. I have my little book that I'm going to be taking with me, and I'm going to have a bunch of recommendations when I come back on the other side. So we will dive right into today's topic, which is about again, kind of back to school kind of concepts. I wasn't joking when I said it is and can be a very expensive part of your annual budget when you think about having young kids and going back to school. And that is something, Kate, that you personally are about to experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in New York State, we tend to start school a little bit later than a lot of the country, but many schools are gearing up to go back in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Or next month. We are into September here when we go back to school, but aisles are already starting to change at the store. The school supplies are out. The advertisements are coming through. And even though my children are only in their 3rd week of summer vacation, I'm thinking to myself of when do we need to start switching gear and getting ready to make the purchases that we need to make as we get closer to the school year.
Exciting. Any thoughts or tips that you have for parents that are looking to make that, fit within their budget?
Yeah, absolutely. And your comment about it being very expensive, for the years, especially when I worked very part-time hours and was staying home with the kids a lot more, September was a hard month because I'd back off hours to be able to just do the running around when we needed to, or, be home in the summer. And then all these things would come in at once. So some things I think that are helpful are spreading it out if you can. When you kind of wait until the end of the summer or right before school to do everything that might need to be done, it tends to be one larger bill that you can't spread out and maybe plan for as easily. So school supplies, especially, I started shifting gears for myself anyway, and other people I know, and buying them throughout the year when I see them go on sale. It's not often that this happens, but there's certain things you're probably going to need. Glue sticks, pencils, Clorox wipes, Kleenex, the things that were every year on our back to school list, especially the certain brand names. When I would see them go up, I would just buy a bulk package of whatever and put them in the closet until we needed them. And actually, I'm at the point now where my kids don't need as many back to school supplies, and I still have quite a stash of pencils and glue sticks that I've been trying to find organizations to donate those to as we're past that. So the school supplies especially, and depending on your district, you may know what you need now, or you might have to wait until school starts. But I always like to be prepared early. So as soon as I had my hand on that list, start buying maybe one thing a week. It's just going to be a couple dollars to start spreading it out versus going and having one large purchase for those there.
And your kids are in middle school at this stage of the game, right? So,
yeah, we're heading into those middle school years. Yeah. Actually, we were very blessed here to get a grant for some school supplies that reduced what we had to purchase personally, which is great if your district's eligible, but we still try to fill in the gaps of what the teachers might need, the school might need in addition to that too. And then as they get older, it changes more based on their personal preference for what they would like to have. The other thing besides just the pens and papers are the clothes. And again, this is probably not a necessity, but for me, the most exciting part of school growing up was getting the new back to school outfits every year and going and doing some shopping and having the new fancy duds on when I walked into school that first day. And again, depending on your circumstances, this could be a really large expense that you need to do. So the way that I've kind of shifted my mindset a little bit is to get a couple of items before school starts so you can still have that feeling of back to school, and then try to wait a few weeks or a month into the school year to really see what they do need versus what they think they need or think they want, and do it all at once to kind of ease it in a little bit. And then it spreads the expense over a month or two versus all at one time.
Do you ever, I know with some families, they've said, we put a budget together and we give half the budget to the kids to pick out what they want. And then we take half the budget and get them what we feel they need. Do you ever do anything like that? Or do you let the kids pick out one item, or is there or have you seen other sort of ideas where you can also use this as a learning experience?
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's huge. Hopefully through some of these podcasts and my blog posts, letting your kids manage some money, I think is really important as they age. So yes, we are starting to get into those years we've done this. We've kind of assigned like, this is our budget for right now. And again, we're still at the age this is developing a little where there's more guidance that we need to get. But I've seen some of, friends or associates that have said, all right, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars. With that budget, you need to buy, a pair of jeans, a pair of shoes. They give them very specific things that have to come home, and then the rest is theirs. And one of my favorite anecdotes is a friend of mine did this with their children. Like, okay, here's your back to school budget. Spend it as you will, but this is the only things you are getting until Christmas time. And their child went and bought a pair of designer jeans, and that was all they bought. And I think their shoes poked a hole in them. So he made her duct tape her shoe and wear it to school that way for a few weeks until they either had worked it off or talked about it, and they use it as a learning lesson of, that was your choice. And that definitely,
funny.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious, but.
And how, out of curiosity, like, how did that person react differently in the future? Like, how did the student, the child?
They definitely were more cautious in thinking through and planning, because we had these follow-up discussions of what happened after that. And so the next year, again, this is someone I was pretty close to this. So the next year they said when shopping came up, he did notice that his daughter went right to the clearance racks to start shopping and seeing what was available before going up and deciding, what we could find already, what we were going to use our money for. It was a great lesson. It definitely taught them a little bit about money management. It also taught them about what you need to have, not to be prideful about your belongings. Yeah, a great exercise. So this is something I know for us, and now that we're getting, my children are getting a little bit older, talking more about, how far our money goes and what we should be spending on those items. With smaller children, I found, I don't know what it was with my children, but I felt like every year we got to September and they went through their growth spurt. So that was one of the reasons I kind of delayed buying all the clothes at once, because we buy these back to school clothes and then 2 months later they didn't really fit that well and we'd be buying them all again. So that was one of the reasons we sort of started spreading it out a little bit as well.
So, that's a great tip. First of all, you mentioned how to budget for school supplies. Secondly, how to budget for back to school clothes, and, using that as a learning opportunity to a certain extent. Any other tips that you have for parents or in general, thinking about that back to school mindset?
So one thing again, I feel like I'm speaking about my experiences in this situation, but those first few weeks of the school year just tend to be so busy. You might have open houses either before or after, getting back into the routine of, going to school, having to do the homework at night. Generally, the start of school comes with the start of school activities. So dance classes, scouts, sporting activities, everything starting up in the evening again. So I know that in the times that we tend to be busy and hustling and not feeling as relaxed, it's easy to spend a little bit extra on convenience items. So I think just trying to maybe think about that ahead of time and plan some time to plan, if that makes sense, to just come up with, one area could be dining. When we're running around, I know it's really easy to just maybe hit the drive-through opposed to having a sit-down meal. So giving yourself a little grace, though, I think is important too, to do what gives you the best experience, a little mental health, not feeling like you have to do everything. But if you plan ahead and just be able to throw some, fall's a great time for the crock pot to come out and throw things in the morning so you have dinner ready. Honestly, when a couple times now we've tried the meal kit delivery service. I don't do them all the time because sometimes we're almost too busy to use even those. But when we're just in that moderate time, having a recipe it shows up at your doorstep with a recipe, ingredients all cut up to cook. Yes, it's a little more expensive than buying groceries, but much less expensive than going out to eat.
So putting a plan together to deal with the back to school fury, I guess you want to say, where you've got those sporting events, all of the fall events, all the fall activities. Yeah, so flurry of fall activities.
I like that phrase. It does seem to be a flurry. That's the way I feel about it every year. And sometimes in a good way. Again, I just like that feeling of things. But and kind of on the other side too, as parents, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get everything done and do things right. So I actually will, in my calendar, and I'm sure you've seen this, Amy, in my calendar, I will block the afternoon of the first day of school just because I know it's been busy. I want to hear about the kids' first day. We might go do something special, but then I know that night there's going to be paperwork to fill out. So much paperwork. I'm grateful that modern technology has changed some of that, where now they print out a report and you just sign it if it's accurate and send it back. But I do remember when the kids were young, laying out packets that had to be filled out the first night of school. And being thankful I only had 2 children and not versus, 4 or 6 children to go through and do all the back to school paperwork for. It felt very redundant. There might be someone realized they were missing something, you got to get back in. So just having a little time in the schedule that week. I often, sometimes the first Friday of the school year, plan to start a little bit later because it's, for me, again, it's mental health. We primarily work from home, or I do at this point in time, and just sometimes to enjoy a few minutes of quiet after the kids have gone back to school. Just maybe a mental health moment. And again, just to make sure we're still on course with what our schedule looks like, what the life looks like. And again, kind of catch up on what have we done, what needs to be done, what are the next several weeks, several months going to look like now that we're back into the school season.
So I like that last tip, planning a mental health moment. For the parents.
I think it's important because I don't know, I don't like being a stress frazzled person all the time. So when we're giving a lot of energy to other things, I think that's something that's important for, all of us to take a few minutes to really think about what do you need, calm down, focus, get collected, or just enjoy a few minutes of quiet around.
I love that tip. That's probably my favorite tip, I have to say.
I did put it on my trying to think through ahead a little bit of what things look like in September. That was one I put on there.
Mental health moment.
And I also called it breathing room.
Yeah. What about for the kids? I mean, when your kids are going back to school, what is it like for them? What is their mental health moment like? I mean, it's exciting, right? But it's also, they're going from what I call summer head to, having to use their brain again. Not that, I mean, your kids are big readers and, they're pretty engaged even throughout the summer, but it's different. They're very mobile in the summer.
Yes.
And then they have to go and sit.
Yes, absolutely. And just so no one thinks my kids are too great, plenty of YouTube watching has gone on in this household. Especially in the days that are busy, I walk out and I don't know if either of them have moved 10 feet in the last 3 hours, but we do try to get out. And like you said, just because the day's not structured, you're running around, going outside, finding a friend, jumping in the pool. It is exhausting, especially the younger age. I will say, any parents listening that have children either starting school for the first time or in those kindergarten through 3rd grade ages, that first week they come home and done. Either falling asleep on the couch at 5:30 at night is not unusual. Tears over little things because our life has just changed a lot in a day. And whether they know it or not, it is a change. It's just going from a change in routine of not many expectations to needing to be, on at all times during the school day. So a little grace for them too. And again, this is just a personal preference, but I don't talk about how busy the schedule is. I don't like too many activities that overlap. So we really try to pick and choose what we're involved in and look at the nights. Maybe there's a night we've got 3 things. We try to make sure the next night, if there's not something scheduled, we don't fill it up just to fill it up to have, again, that breathing room, time to kind of calm down, catch up on things, get homework done, get to bed early if we need to. Because I do find as my kids are getting older, switching the schedule from the summer sleeping schedule to the school year sleeping schedule is difficult. Just pairing back to going to bed at a normal time and waking up a lot earlier. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal, right? I mean, for me, I don't have that challenge of, I just have one schedule, I don't have that fluctuation and change. And I know for me, if I just have 2 days where my schedule is off, I can get very cranky, and I'm not, I have a little bit, hopefully have a little bit more control over that. The kids don't, they really don't. And they can get cranky pretty easy.
Yes, they can. Absolutely. So I remember when I was a kid trying to transition those last couple of weeks back to hours. We've tried to do it too. There's been other times we've been let's just go cold turkey and start fresh the first day because it forces us to. Again, easier now that my kids are older versus when they were 5, 6, 7 years old. So things as they age, the stages change a little bit too. And even their anticipation of the beginning of school is very different as they age. From when they were young, it's all of this excitement, which then sometimes crashes, the adrenaline buildup. To, I think, as they get older, they're excited in a different way. It's a little bit more exciting about the social piece, going back to see our friends and football games and basketball games.
Yeah. How has it changed? I mean, thinking about when your kids were really young, How has that changed, and what were some of the challenges back then?
So actually, I had a point on here that this is going to tie into perfectly. And I think the things that have changed, like I said, it used to be more we'd go to school, have the day, come home. And it was more like my kids would go to an after school program that would, some days you could tell they really just wanted to be home. But other days it was nice to have a place to go to do your homework and read and do puzzles with kids and swim and run around. To now, it's definitely less free time in the evening, more homework. So that is something that comes into play as they get older. And then school events. We have periods of time where we're going from school to they might have an after school activity, and then they come home and there's an evening activity. And it might not be, sometimes they're required. They're on a team. They're in the band or the choir. Or other times they just want to go to a school activity, which leads into a new expense that we're coming up on now, which are these other activities they want to get involved in as they age. So kind of in our tips about budgeting, mentioning when you are talking about school supplies or back to school clothes, it's also a good time to revisit with your children, kind of just spending in general, whether you give an allowance or they work for certain things, just talking about what is coming up that they might need money for and whether they're earning it or you're giving them a certain set amount each week. It's something they can use because again, some schools charge for events, some don't. But typically that might mean they're going to go maybe out for a snack afterwards or beforehand, pay the entry fee, different things like that just as they age and have a different type of social life and a little more freedom, they are going to need income of some sort. And whether that comes from a job or comes from you, talking about wise spending and spending habits and where that's going.
So teaching opportunities to your children about finances. Yeah.
Excuse me. So going through that, like I said earlier, any opportunity to help them learn about money and expenses and costs and manage that coming in and coming out, I just think is a great experience. And having expectations around, versus just constantly handing them money, like here it is, whatever, go do what you need to, or saying, here's what you have for the weekend or for the next 3 weeks, use it wisely. Maybe when it's done, kind of teaching them to budget a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Kate, these are all phenomenal tips. I think that anybody listening that has a couple of younger children, I'm sure can get some things out of this that perhaps they knew some things were coming, but, hadn't thought about the idea of buying a couple things prior to like clothing or something prior to school. So they have some, clothes to wear, but then waiting, just a few weeks after, to actually
fill in the rest
on sale. Yeah. I love that idea. And I also love the idea of, the mental space for the parents. I think that's so important. So
that's me being an introvert. I'm a very extroverted introvert, but that's me needing to recharge my batteries.
Well, I think it's a great idea. And I hope that everybody has enjoyed listening to this podcast and Kate's speaking from firsthand experience, where I'm just more listening and learning from that side of the thing this time. But I believe that it's important that we share these kinds of ideas. We'd love to hear what questions and concerns you have. If you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, please reach out to us. Send us a note via any of the social media, or send us a note to info@rootedpg.com. That's info@rootedpg.com. We'd love to hear your questions and feature them in upcoming podcasts or asking for a friend. And we'd love it if you like this podcast and you can go rate us on Apple Podcasts, because if you do, that tends to move us up in the rankings a bit more and more people can find us. And we just simply would love to hear your thoughts and comments, just in general anyways. Please feel free to share this with your friends, and we hope you stay tuned in for this month's topic of back to school, because we have lots more to come. Thanks, everyone.
And that will about do it for today's episode of Wine and Dime. You can contact Amy through the website, www.rootedpg.com, or amy@rootedpg.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram @rootedpg for the latest news. And if you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like to hear about, feel free to let us know. And don't forget to rate and subscribe the show wherever you get your podcasts. And again, thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.